I already said the resolution, this is going to be a policy round resolution asking to take a specific action with the word should. Policymaking, this is a policy round. Policymaking is key to actionable education, is key to actually getting educational impacts in today's round. Our argument is going to be that this should be weighed on net benefits, is the most fair and educational for both sides of today's debate. Therefore, the affirmation is basically we're going to do exactly the resolution. We're going to adopt the S200 HR 669, prohibiting the president from conducting a first use nuclear strike again without congressional approval. The agent of action is the United States federal government. The agent of enforcement is the exact same mechanism. The time frame is going to be immediately, and what we're going to talk about why immediately is going to be important, and the funding is going to be funding neutral. There's no money that needs to be pushed into this inherently. The first is that Trump has the first use capability in the status quo and doesn't have to consult anybody before he uses the first nuclear weapons, which means that it's dangerous right now that he's able to do so without talking to anybody. The two is going to be that Congress, about 1/3 of Congress right now will allow, or says that they would allow him to use nuclear strike force, which means 2/3 are going to vote against it if there is congressional approval for this, which means that they're probably not going to allow Trump to use it in the status quo. There's going to be that Trump threats are happening in the status quo. You can specifically look to all the tweets he had, like this tweet war he had with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Twitter, which means that there's actually all these threat construction that's happening in the status quo. The first advantage is that of government checkback. In the uniqueness, first we can see that Congress doesn't want it to happen. The little a here is going to be, you can cross apply the 1/3 will allow, but it's decreasing in the status quo. The little b is going to be that Democrats are moving into the Senate and are winning elections in the status quo, which are more likely to check back against nuclear threat construction than Republicans, which means there's going to be more pushback against the president using first-use nuclear weapons. The C point is going to be the warrant. This is the Alabama election, which basically is a state that was almost 100% always going to be Republican, but it turned Democrat, which means that there's a shift in the status quo towards Democratic policymaking. The two in the uniqueness is that Trump's threat construction is happening in the status quo. Trump said that his nuclear war button is larger than North Korea's nuclear war button, and which means that aggression and posturing is happening in the status quo, which is increasing the chance of nuclear war as both countries are edging towards nuclear war. The little b here is going to be that if there's a state of emergency which is created, which frames this triad by calculus where Trump is continuing to push other countries to the limit of nuclear war so that he can justify things like increasing military drills in the Yellow Sea, which is right next to Korea. The little c here is going to be that framing such as this causes. Framing of nuclear war as the only option and the bargaining chip is the justification for things like oppression and conflict, and is the internal link to oppression and conflict because they use the threat construction as a justification for being able to go into these different areas and do things like military drills that are specifically polluting and things like that into the links. First, when the plan passes, Trump has to look towards congressional. Trump has to look towards Congress and looks toward multiple perspectives before being able to actually go through this nuclear first strike. This causes three things. Little a here is going to be the perspectives are key to creating coalitions in democratic process. Our argument is going to be that the fact that he has to consult with different people means that there's going to be larger amount of democratic policymaking going on. You can cross apply the Democrats are moving in, which means that there's going to be Trump who has to be forced to work with the Democrats, which is going to cause more liberal policymaking going through Trump. The little b here is going to be this is able to check back for the misuse in times of unnecessary war, which means that Trump isn't going to be going on this unnecessary nuclear war path, which means we're able to check back for things like unnecessary nuclear war and unnecessary deaths unless it's absolutely necessary. And since you can cross apply our warrant that only 1/3 of the people inside Congress are going to pass this, it means that there has to be really, really necessary in order for it to actually pass, which means it's only in the last case scenario for this to be used. The little c is going to be the one-person decision is specifically bad because there's no check back or biases, which is not inclusive of different opinions. We need to be looking towards other opinions, not just Trump. The little b here is going to be inclusivity is key to actionable discourse because if you're only looking towards one person, you're not actually working with other people. Actionable discourse is the only way that we can act through policy making in order to work with other people and create coalitions. The second link. Perception of Trump would check back. Little a this checks back for the existential threat of nuclear war, which paired with an irrational actor is checked back for by Congress because there's multiple people. There's less likely that there's going to be multiple irrational actors who are going to be voting for this to be passing. Little b here is going to be that this deconstructs this It deconstructs this facade of fear where Trump is currently able to just use these nuclear weapons at his own disposal without having to check back, which means that it forces us to not to consider other things other than nuclear war first, like diplomacy and other things. Just you can also cross-apply that Democrats are more likely to look towards diplomatic action than using military discourse, which means that this forces diplomatic discourse to actually happen. The 3 point under the links is that this is a perceptual link. It decreases the international chance of war if people are international countries are reassured that Trump is not going to go to nuclear war because nuclear war isn't going to happen in a world where Congress is not going to allow Trump to use the nuclear first strike weapons, which means that other countries are more likely to work diplomatically with the United States, specifically in the Asian area where other countries, they're like really wary that they're going to be, the United States is nuking places like North Korea because there's all this threat construction that's going on, which is able to check back for like Trump action, because now there's this diplomacy which is able to check back. International actors are specifically good for checking back for international actions for Trump specifically because there's international pressures for bargaining chips like there's bargaining chips that other countries can use, such as economic diplomacy. The fourth internal link is going to be international spillover. The little a is going to be the 67% of international parliaments vote similarly to the United States, according to the Pew Research Center. This is specifically important that it is parliaments, not their leaders, because it means that the diplomatic process in other countries is also going to be able to check back for this in other countries. Little b, here's going to be other countries require checkbacks, which now decreases the chance of international conflict. If the United States is not going to allow this first strike with their leader having to check back with Congress before, this means that other countries now also have to check back with their congressional leaders, which means that this is able to check back for things like this threat construction. The little 5 is going to be that this stabilizes conflicts. This means that other countries have to work diplomatically, not only internally with their own diplomats, but also internationally with different countries in order to resolve conflicts, not looking towards nuclear war and things like that first, which means that it can't justify these it can't justify nuclear posturing or like other types of like low-scale nuclear weapon usage, because there's no longer this threat construction of like try or die. The impacts, there's 3 main impacts. First is going to be, just getting this for. The first is that impact of lies. It decreases the chance of an irrational actor using news, which decreases the chance of lies. Nuclear war is going to be inevitable at the point where Trump is able to like use this willy-nilly. He's just going to use it if he thinks that he's so threatened to the point where he's backed into a corner. The second impact is going to be agency and democracy at the point where he's going to be giving power to the people where congressional action is able to check back, and not just in the United States, but also internationally. The third is going to be deconstruct the state of emergency, which means that threats are no longer being able to be used for justification for military action, which is unnecessary. This checks back for, it should also check back for, this is also checked back for by international diplomacy, which is able to obstruct countries from going to irrational wars. The fourth is going to be this solves for dehumanization of oppression and conflict in the world. The example of this is that the United States is no longer able to justify things like military drills that are dehumanizing and specifically bad for the environment and causing environmental degradation, which is able to be solved.
4 off AC in order.
How many off again?
4 off AC in order. Do you mind if I just actually?
What do you need?
Sure. The first 3 are pretty short, and then the 4th one is a long display. Also, thanks y'all for making this a great tournament, judging, participating. It's a lot of fun. Thank you. All right, let's get started. Should get some fun.
Man, this is like.
Okay. First off is the theory hedge. Affirming is easier than negating. Ace opponent's perception. The applicant see first and last purpose. They can bias the judges in order to vote for them. This outweighs other arguments on the theory because it is irreversible. You can't reverse psychological biases, but you can reverse things like time skew by just getting faster. Piece opponent's ground. The app is able to parametrize the resolution defend a subset of the topic, which means that they can de-link core neg disadvantages and also generics like politics. Next, we'll go on to the second one. The sufficient negative burden is to prove that the affirmative is that the resolution is false, but negate means which is to deny the truth of. We contend that the sorority paradox is true, and that negates. Premise 1 is that n grains of sand is a heap. Premise 2 is that n minus 1 grains of sand is also a heap. But the repeated application of premise 2 means that if I keep subtracting grains of sand from a heap, then even 1 grain of sand is also considered a heap. So there's no distinction between a heap of sand and 1 grain of sand. This means that all premises are the result of, this means that some premises can be considered vague, and there's no ability to distinguish between something's existence or non-existence. Yeah.
If there's 1 less grain of sand, is there less sand?
It's still a heap, though. Yes, but it's still a heap, right? It's if you say that a heap is like 10,000 grains, you remove a grain of sand, that's still a heap. Okay, next, the fact is that the USFG also does not exist. We just remove 1 senator, 1 representative. That means that there is no USFG. That means that repeat application is kind of also means that there's no distinction between USFG's existence and non-existence, which means that the affirmative isn't possible because there's no USFG. Second, there's a logical contradiction because there are very vague premises in the app, which means you should just vote negative. Counterpoint text. The United States federal government, the United States Congress should impeach Trump and remove him from office. This competes to net benefits. This solves 100% of the AF. It solves all of like the evidence about Trump being an unstable leader. There's no reason to vote AF. Next up is the dissent.
100% of the unique cases is relevant to Trump.
Also, 100% of the unique cases is relevant to Trump for their AF. There aren't any unique advantages to all their offenses potential to Trump. Also, yeah, you can just compete their benefits. Deterrence. 1. No countries currently are moving to proliferation. Ace pointed according to The Guardian, China has basically stopped sourcing fissile material in February. They have basically no ability to build bombs in the future. So they're not increasing their nuclear stockpile. Peace point, Putin boasts that technological superiority with Russia means that they basically aren't scared of the US and are not going to build any new nuclear missiles in the status quo. This means that the status quo is very stable and there's only a risk that it gets worse. 2 is that tensions are currently increasing in the status quo. Ace point is with China. Ace point is China either military problems with the South China Sea and conflicts between the US and China trying to struggle for dominance of the II is that there are huge tariffs from US and China that are basically threatening their ability to manufacture weapons. II is that the support of Taiwan was basically quasi-formalized when Trump said he was looking for a peaceful resolution between the crisis, which really angered China. Peace support is Russia. The little I is that Russia blusters basically has blustered for a long time about nuclear superiority, which means that they're pretty scared of the U.S. II is that Dana White, the head of the Pentagon, the spokesman for the Pentagon, said the U.S. awareness of Russia is increasing. Wait, what is this?
That they're aware that Russia is increasing, that the matching member step.
That they're basically aware that Russia's belligerence is increasing the status quo and the US is attempting to match them at every step. One is arms race. Ace point is that the U.S. deterrence goes away because countries feel like they have no threat they're facing. In other words, that countries are going to be much more likely to escalate conflicts with the U.S. and escalate declines in falling off in relations because they realize that the U.S. will never be able to first strike them because, as they said, the U.S. will never want to first strike. Piece of point is that piece of point is that arms races are now increased because radar means that submarines, bombers, or ICBMs are incredibly easy to locate.
The United States.
Yeah, because of their size, due to electromagnetic sensors, they can measure the changes in a electromagnetic field as nuclear weapons are moved. Yeah.
Detection ability is improved, but the United States hasn't modernized their fleet, and they're still running the Minuteman.
Detection abilities have improved, but the United States has not modernized their fleet, and they're still running the Minuteman from the 1960s, which is an incredibly ineffective weapon. C, this leads to a buildup in first strike capabilities in Russia and China. I support that both countries believe in military superiority, very concerned about the U.S. I is that they would rather launch a first strike in order to surprise the U.S. Disappointed that emergency destruction does not check back in the status quo because they aren't confident they won't be nuked back. Generation 3 nuclear warheads already appear on electromagnetic radar, but
and the Generation 3s are on Minuteman.
Yeah, and the Generation 3s are on Minuteman, but the Dongfeng rockets, the Chinese rockets did not, because the payload is a lot lighter, which means the Chinese rockets cannot be detected, but U.S. rockets can be detected. 2 supports the environment. A supports that Namibia is one of the most biodiverse parts of sub-Saharan Africa. B supports that uranium is sourced here, and there's a lot of uranium mining happening in the status quo. But
there's not.
Because China's actually, yeah, there's not, because China has not had an incentive to expand there yet. C supports that cause massive ecological destruction, which cause a food chain collapses. More and more of the environment in this country is destroyed, and leads to desertification as more forests are removed in order to make way for uranium mines. Yeah, this is a terrible impact because it leads to a lot of species dying that are keystone species in this region, which will lead to massive structural violence against poor people here and who rely on forestry in order to get food. And be supported probably lead to a decline in ecosystems because if we take out one trophic layer, it means that other layers that depend on that for food will also die off, which will cause a cascading effect which will kill all life in the region. Yeah.
Can you use 2 sentences to just tell me what your EnviroLink is?
Yeah, Namibia has a ton of uranium, and it's also really important for the environment, and China isn't in Namibia right now, but the plan caused them to go to Namibia, which caused ecological collapse in sub-Saharan Africa.
So build up of first strike capabilities means more uranium mining, which is terrible for the environment. That's the story. It's pretty simple. Next case. Okay. Overview of the case debate is that all their arguments why unstable leaders are bad are all caused by Trump, but the problem is that the counterplan solves for Trump completely because he's just eliminated from office, which means that resolves 100% of the risk for the act to actually be true. Even if you don't buy that, we'll just go for a ton of defense of these arguments. First of all Trump's arguments and all the arguments of any leader are basically bluster. They're all fundamentally subservient to political elites that want to check them back. In other words, they're donors that probably have very strong incentives against nuclear war, probably have pretty strong incentives against escalating tensions with these other countries. Second point is that Trump is a very isolationist leader, in that he's he really does not want to go to war with countries. He's really not trying to launch wars because he's very anti-US agent. Third point, no diversionary war. Even if Trump did want to launch a diversionary war, he would probably launch a conventional war against a smaller country like Iraq or Syria, as empirically proved by George Bush's diversionary wars, which means that the likelihood that a diversionary war actually goes nuclear is probably really small. It does not make a lot of sense to get into a diversionary nuclear conflict with Russia or China, which would not be politically very popular, but probably a lot more politically popular to get into a diversionary war with smaller countries. Also, next on the plan debate. Plan flaw should indicates a normative obligation of the government to implement a policy, but it really should have said shall, which actually influence, which actually suggests the government will adopt the policies. A voting issue one is presumption, since the affirmative, basically the affirmative plan does not. Second is voting for legal education, since like vague plan writing is like pretty bad. We should learn about legal education because it's valuable in things like contract law and like people actually learning like how to sign contracts and like understand. Next on the second, spillover arguments. Okay. One is that Trump probably saw the spillover. The U.S.'s rejection of Trump and authoritarianism also probably spills over, would probably decrease authoritarianism in other countries, which means that there's no unique reason why the counterclaim would not also solve for 100% of these second advantages. The second argument is that even if then on the arguments that deconstructing the state of exception one, the arguments about the state of exception and securitization are not reverse causal. They merely describe a state of policy making, a state of entrenched biases, but they do not suggest that there's any ability to reverse those in the first place. Given that the securitized logic is already ingrained. Second, it's also equally ingrained in the Democratic Party, which has been super supportive of the military-industrial complex. Third, the root reason why these things happen is because there are things like donors that and like the military-industrial complex that pays for politicians to be in their pocket, which means that the Democrats are probably going to be just as militarist as Republicans. So it's probably not going to make a big difference in terms of actually deconstructing the state of exception just because Republicans don't have power. Yeah.
Northrop Grumman is the biggest financer of the Democratic.
Yeah, also, like Northrop Grumman's like the biggest financer of the Democratic Party. Like, there's probably not going to be much impact to Democrats being better than Republicans. Yeah, actually, that's basically. Yes. Great. Can I have the pack?
I'm just writing.
I am going to go. They're off in order, and then half in order.
Oh, actually, that's fire.
Is everybody? Alright. Starting time. Now, so the first off in litigation, first of all, we yelled clear like a bunch of times, they didn't really clear, so I'm still not entirely sure what this is, but basically it looked like a bunch of arguments why you should be presuming the negative in today's round. And first of all, they said this idea there's like a psychological bias, and you need to be able to check your perceptions. That's probably something that's inevitable on both sides of the debate. Both sides probably biases no matter what they're writing, so it's probably, that's not like unique to the affirmative. Second of all, is that this is probably bad, specifically psychological biases. That means that we're actually putting more biases into the round. If we're responding to an argument they've looked down in 15 seconds, we're probably using even more of our biases to respond to it because we're not actually engaging with like arguments that are made very clear, which means that they're probably making things worse by running this. The third is don't let them explode ground on this. At the point where they barely spend any time on this, if they go and collapse this in the block without actually explaining it, without clearing when we yell clear, that probably means it's going to be bad. It's probably going to cause more biases. It's probably also going to cause a lot of negative effects like fairness, which is going to spill over in a like micro-level unfairness causes a spillover into the actual political sphere, which is also probably bad because more real-world impact than like whatever this like hedge on the neg argument was. And second of all, they said they need ground for disads. They did run a disad. They also ran 3 other weird arguments, so that probably means that they do have ground in this round. That's not an actual reason to be voting for the negation in today's round. The second off is that we have to prove the resolution's false because every grain removed, like you can remove grain of sand and still a heap of sand. So there are a few reasons. First of all, is that the math pretty much disproves this. You can remove each grain of sand one at a time until it's no longer a heap. Math disproves because there's always individual identities. The second is that it's badge of sameness. If you have the idea that just like one argument, like one grain of sand means that there's going to be like you remove it, it's still a heap. This perpetuates this idea of sameness because you're just saying removing one thing, but everything's like still the same. It's a really like theoretical argument, but the basic argument here is that that's probably a pretty bad thing because if you're saying that each grain of sand removed isn't going to make a difference, that means that each individual opinion in a metaphorical level is probably also like bad and you want to sure.
So semantically, at what point does a heap of sand transfer from being like a heap of sand to not a heap of sand?
That doesn't really matter because it doesn't like if you're calling everything a heap of sand, that means you're not paying attention to each individual grain of sand, and that's probably a pretty important thing because that means we're ignoring a bunch of different individual differences and things, and we're creating this environment of sameness, which is bad because we specifically talk about having sameness and not having individual opinions is key to, but it does things like it kills coalitions, it kills the ability to have different ideas, which means that if we're just having like perpetuating this idea that everything is a heap of sand unless you move each individual grain of sand, that means that we're never actually being able to interrogate each piece of sand specifically, so we're just having these net ideas instead of interrogating each individual idea, which is keep checking back a lot of the things like negative rhetoric, which we talk about in our advantage. They also say that you should be like you shouldn't embrace the United States federal government because of this idea of like sameness. Actually, we're going to make the argument that the only way to get rid of sameness in the USFG, the only way to actually address individual concerns is by passing the affirmation plan, because we allow coalitions, we allow different opinions to be heard. So this actually creates a United States federal government that doesn't link into this argument at all. And then they also say that you should be like voting neg on this, but they don't actually give any reason to this. We're going to say you should publicly prefer act because at the point where they're actually arguing about grains of sand in a round and they say we shouldn't have inherent biases. Like it's probably a reason to prefer the app if they like make this round about grains of sand. That doesn't make any sense. They don't give any justification for their vote neg, which means that if anything, it's probably a reason probably reason to vote act because they're just trying to make a bunch of things into vote arguments when they really aren't. They're sure.
Exploding blips
Yeah.
allows PMR.
Also, don't allow them to explode blips in this because this. We know that goes far aside. On the counterplan, they said that we should impeach Trump. First of all, impeach Trump and pass the affirmation plan. This means that if there's ever, first of all, we're able to check back against Trump even harder if we do the permutation, but ultimately this a permanent test of competition, basically seeing if their plan can be done in the world of the affirmation, then it's not an opportunity cost to the plan. So obviously there's no reason why this can't happen in the same world. They barely offer any reason of competition, so there's not really a reason not to do that. Also, being able to impeach Trump means we're also able to check back authoritarian leaders in the future, because even if we impeach Trump, they can't check back or who's going to be elected in the future, which means that the only way to check back that is by actually passing the affirmation plans, we're able to check back against like authoritarian leaders that get elected in the future, and we're also able to create this international influence, which they don't really respond to, which they don't talk about their disadvantage. But basically, the first disadvantage of the counterplan is that there can be authoritarian leaders in the future. The second disadvantage to the counterplan overall is that even if by impeaching Trump, that creates a cycle when Pence is going to be put into office, and Pence is even worse because Pence has more allies inside of Congress, and that's probably bad because then Pence can pass even more offensive policies because some people are still able to veto a lot of Trump's action, but they're not going to do that to Pence because Pence has even more allies there, which is probably even worse, and that means impeaching Trump is just going to create more oppressive little good government. The only way to check back this oppressiveness is to create these coalitions, which only the affirmation is able to do unless you decide that a grain of sand is going to solve coalitions, which probably isn't because they don't actually work this out enough. Now, on to the disadvantage. First of all, they say that the main summary of this, the main summary of this disadvantage is that we're going to increase the arms race because we're going to get rid of nuclear capabilities. So the main argument here is that deterrence has failed in the past. Being able to launch a nuclear weapon doesn't deter countries. Even with the fact that in 1999 a dispute between two nuclear countries, between China and another nuclear country, they still ended up going to a proxy war together, which probably means that deterrence has always failed in the past. But second of all, we see that the only way to stop war at all is to address the root cause, which is that of threat construction. The only way to get rid of threat construction is to eliminate the one person being in charge of politics. We say that having Trump in charge of politics, just having Trump in charge of politics is probably a bad thing because it means that we're not having this diversity of opinions. If we say that the only way to check back for wars by solving this root cause of threat construction, the only way to do that is to vote for the affirmative because you can't solve this and ultimately if deterrence fails, there's always going to be the risk of war unless you actually solve for the root cause, and they can see that this is the root cause in today's debate. The third argument here is that coalitions are specifically key. They talk about a lot of negative things that happen with war, for instance, the fact that China's going to move somewhere, they're going to cause a bunch of environmental damage. But the main argument here is that the only way to check back for environmental damage is to build coalitions. We make this argument on our advantage, which they also don't really respond to, which is basically that coalitions are key to checking back for things like the environment, and the only way to have that is to have a multipolarity of opinions by passing the affirmation plan and allowing Congress to discuss things together with the president instead of just allowing them to pass. Even impeaching Trump isn't going to check back this because we're still going to have certain things that the president's able to do himself instead of setting this precedent for having diplomatic negotiations. They also have the argument that there's going to be an increased rate of first strikes in other countries. We're going to say this is probably not going to happen because even if the U.S. doesn't have the ability to first strike and launch nukes, there's still going to be the possibility that the U.S. can launch a nuke back. So mutually assured destruction probably still applies if you don't buy any of the other arguments in today's round. On to the topic case. They basically say that we need to look at this through a they make this argument about the wording of the resolution. They say we should use the word shall instead of the word will in our plain text. This is pretty bad because this excludes, specifically not only in this round, but in rounds where people might not have a great, if people come from a school where they didn't get a great English education or something, this excludes them from the round permanently because they're not able to use the effective language to justify the resolution, which is bad because using the thing this language is too sophisticated for certain people means that certain people are never able to voice in politics, and this is really bad and a unique reason to be voting down the negation because they're having exclusionary logic. But second of all is that this is also probably bad in today's round because this is literally normal means. Using will in a plain text implies that we are actually going to do an act, and should implies an obligation to do something. Will implies that we're actually going to do that, which even if it doesn't reflect the wording of the resolution, it's the way that we should be proposing a policy option. Else we're just saying that it is a possibility that we would do, but we're not actually defending the affirmative burden in today's round. On to the act. So first of all, they say the counterplan is going to solve this with Trump. First of all, the Trump problem resolves this, but second of all, the counterplan is never going to be able to resolve because the only way to check back for hyperpolarization and the difference of opinions that causes war, and the only way to pass the affirmative plan and have more discussion. They say that political elites come first, and that they're always going to dictate the policies. This is simply not true. The voters determine policies, and the only ways to increase voters' voices is to increase coalitions and discussions, which the affirmation checks back for. extend the argument about agency and about specifically how increased agencies can check back this. They say that Trump is isolationist. Trump is a show-off too. If Trump wants to like show off his nuclear button, he's going to increase tensions, and the only way to check back the show-offness is to pass the affirmative plan. The isolationist and probably isn't true. The point is going to meetings with other countries. Right now, saying we're going to like go to war with a small country instead of having diversionary war. This is probably bad, and also perception is going to check back specifically if we have the argument. If we make the argument that at any like if there's going to increase perception, the U.S. is going to check back, going to war in other countries, and there other countries are probably going to check back for us, not at this time. They say that Trump is going to solve like spillover with the counterplanning and cross-boundary responses by the counterplan is probably bad, and also by the firm is going to resolve this. They say that this is going to create a stated policy where nobody's going to have biases, but we make the argument that biases only exist when there's individual action, but we're the only team that solves for individual action because we eliminate individual action altogether instead of these coalitions and these conversations, which means we eliminate the biases they're talking about. They say that the Democrats support the military. This probably isn't true. You can look to our warrants. They give no warrants. We give a lot of warrants when the Democrats don't support the military, so err on the side of evidence. They finally say that the donors are not the politicians. They say the donors are the politicians, but we make the argument that rhetoric is probably to be checked back from politics and extend the entirety or internal length impacts.
Order. T-interview, whatever the paradox is, counterplan, disad, case, actually, sorry. T-interview, paradox, counterplan, plan flaw, case, advantage. Yep.
Was the plan flaw like the wording and the resolution?
Yeah, shall versus should.
Let me get this right. It's the T, the
Well,
SAM.
that's just theory interview, there's no theory.
Okay, the theory interview, SAM, CP, DISAD, same exact order.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, you're not ready? We can see that biases are inevitable no matter what. They read this offensive argument that we make biases appear more. We say that our argument is that there's an argument about primacy and recency. Recency is a static bias. It exists at the beginning and it exists at the end. There is no unique increase over there, which means that there's no offensive argument because we're conceding it's inevitable. Second argument is undeniable. Yeah, okay, we don't even impact anything on this, so it doesn't even matter. Okay, next argument is a paradox. Concede the fact that math is proof. They don't read any office on this. Okay, can we counterplan? You didn't ask if it's condo. It's condo. We're kicking it. On plan flaw arguments, you say that it's exclusionary. We read that there's no bright line argument on what isn't exclusionary for checking your rhetoric. Everywhere that means that you stunt any policy action, which leads to genocide and other things because you aren't able to stop because you're always just checking your rhetoric, which is really bad because it is like, yeah. It's also you should don't. Like, there's going to be a huge ton of speculation if they try to go for this, like, turn argument, but, like, don't look at speculation because it just leads to, like, no logically adjudicated debate because there's no way to verify what is and what isn't exclusionary. I'm not going to plan flaw either. Disadvantage. Their first argument that deterrence is failed in the past and there's proxy war with China and some unidentified country. We would say this is probably like, I don't even know who it was, but the fact that they went to a proxy war instead of an actual nuclear conflict probably means that there is significant deterrence when you're looking at nuclear states. When you have the United States able to enact a first strike, that is probably the thing that stopped that conflict from going nuclear, which means when you when you remove that deterrent, you then have a higher propensity for going to a nuclear war because there is that check back. The second argument is that there's a root of that this is a root of threat construction, but we say that Russia would still construct threats, especially in the world where they believe that they are military superior in almost every single way to the United States because they've been building missiles that are built later than the 1960s and that they've been building like more nuclear submarines and Arctic icebreakers and other things that make their military much more modern and much more sophisticated and much more effective than the United States military, which means that their threat construction is probably going to be much higher because they don't have the same opportunity cost for going to war because they will likely win a war with the United States. The third argument is that they say that coalitions are key in diplomatic negotiations, but the argument over here is that the United States has like really bad relationships with China and Russia. We give you three conceded arguments on China, which specifically that the United States and the South China Sea are increasing tensions because of the land claims to different parts of the region. The United States allies in the area are becoming, the United States is ramping up their commitment to allies in the area with like, sending, didn't they send a carrier to Okinawa? Like, yeah. So, which means that they're ramping up involvement in the South China Sea, which means that China is just pissed off about that. The second argument you can extend to the tariffs means that the Chinese ability to manufacture weapons is decreased because the United States cut off their supply to critical infrastructure in order to produce. The third argument is Taiwan, where the United States basically endorses Taiwan. We say they want to come to a peaceful resolution with Taiwan and China, but that would legitimize Taiwan in and of itself. So those are three conceded arguments that say that the United States and China relations are low in the status quo. All they say is that the coalitions are key to solving that, which is a cross-application without much warranting specifically. So when in the world we read three unconceded warrants on why United States-China relations are low, and they just make this cross-application that's kind of blippy, is probably a pretty significant differential in terms of that. Secondly, when you're looking at, how much time do I have left? Counting up. Okay. Secondly, when you look in a world where like Trump is still president, Trump's coalitions probably aren't key because coalitions probably aren't key because Xi Jinping is got his term indefinitely extended by the Chinese Communist Party, which means that there's no reason for him to cooperate in this situation because political favorability is really irrelevant. He doesn't need to cooperate, which means he doesn't need to talk to coalitions at all. Then the next argument they make is no first strikes. Am I missing something? They can launch back, but you can cross-apply a lot of or extend a lot of first strike takes and second strike capabilities. That these countries have intelligence of where the United States, everything that's part of the nuclear triad, the bombers and the subs and the land mics, and the land silos. That's a conceded piece of evidence to see that if these countries wanted to nuclear strike, they could nuclear strike these silos and remove the United States' entire second strike capability. That conceded argument is really problematic because it means that these countries, without first strike, won't be second struck. That removes the deterrent that the United States had, which means that in the status quo, or which means that in the world of the plan, the only deterrent that exists is the risk of a first strike, because the second strike doesn't exist. Yeah. Anyways, even though they read some defense in places, they can see the entirety of the Namibia situation. In a world where there is where the United States is less sophisticated than China, because China is the Dongfeng 21 missile, which means that they're able to see everywhere that the Minuteman is going, but the United States can't see where the Dongfeng is going. That means that the United States is not able to intercept the Dongfeng as effectively as the Chinese can the Minuteman. That means that when you remove first strike, China knows that they're going to be able to shoot Minutemen out of the sky much more effectively than the United States will be able to shoot Dongfeng out of the sky, which means there's no reason for them to not proliferate. If they proliferate, they go to Namibia because that is the only source of uranium that China can reliably get. We read you specific arguments why Namibia's biodiversity and ecology is specifically key to the entirety of sub-Saharan Africa, because sub-Sahara is tropically isolated because of the Sahara Desert. That means that if there's a trophic level that goes missing in what country? In Namibia, because of the uranium mining, that means that it causes a cascading effect where one trophic level causes a biological collapse, which then goes regional, which then creates food shortages and water shortages and resource wars and conflict. And there's 1 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa, which means that this region will be wrapped in war of the conventional nature. Secondly, this leads to ecosystem collapse in the trophic layer, which is really problematic because then these people need food to survive, and if they don't have food, then they die. So yeah. Brief overview of this argument. There are two scenarios. One is entirely conceded, the other has defense and isn't really relevant to it. Go to the advantage. Extend Adams' argument that Trump is blustering, especially because really in the pocket of the political elite, you can cross-apply the analysis you can remember the fact that his top military advisor was Rex Tillerson for a really long time. Who else does he have? It doesn't really matter because Trump is really he plays golf with billionaires. The type of input that he's getting are from people that have a vested interest in making sure that the United States does not go to war in these situations. These people have if the United States were to go to war, these people would lose a lot of money. So when they're talking to him when they're playing golf or whatever they're doing, then they're telling him things that will make him not want to go to war. They never give you any specific articulations to why this type of why Trump isn't specifically susceptible in the same ways as other people.
Also, Bush proves that diversionary wars are always conventional, never nuclear.
Yeah. Also, Bush proves that conventional wars are conventional, never nuclear. You can also cross-apply their own analysis where China went to war with some unnamed country. That was conventional, not nuclear, which means that there are basically two warrants as to why diversionary wars are conventional, not nuclear. Then we say Trump is isolationist. They say that Trump is showing off and he's meeting with other leaders, but that's part of the obligations of president. He has to meet with other people. But when you look at his economic and his policy perspectives, he's implementing tariffs on other countries, which makes the United States isolationist economically. And he's just been talking about building a wall, which is geographically and politically isolationist. Which means when you look at the actual policies that Trump has been going for, he's extremely isolationist. Which means this argument flows through and is not really responsive to what we were saying. Then we say that, then they say that Democrats won't support this, and Democrats are overwhelmingly doing it right now. But if you extend Adam's argument that the number one people who are financing Democrats are defense contractors like Northrop Grumman, which is really problematic because they don't give you any specific articulation as to why the Democrats aren't as susceptible to outside influences in the same way that Trump is, which means you can cross-apply the analysis because both are politicians and both are susceptible to the same political influences in order to get elected in the future, which probably means that these people have a vested interest. On the back end of the link level, you can...
securitization is not reverse causal.
Yeah, okay. You can extend Adams' analysis that securitization is not reverse causal because, it's not unique to Republicans because the Democrats do it as well, which then takes out, the third link argument. Additionally, the first, second, and fourth impacts are outweighed because we're talking about, a very high probability impact if, there's a 1% increase in the United States, 1% increase in the United States protection, or like if they like lose the first strike ability, that means that there's no reason why China would not securitize. And like defensive realism means that if you have the ability to securitize, you will securitize, which means that like every single thing that like would happen and like with a conceded internal link scenario to environment, like that's just a really like high probability approximate fact.
Okay, great. There are going to be 2 overviews, which you should flow, and the disadvantages of any case.
Your copy's cold.
What's up?
Your copy went cold.
Is anybody not ready? Great. Okay. These flows are pretty messy, but I'm going to break it down. There are 2 impacts of this debate. There's nuclear war and environment. Here's why environment outweighs nuclear war. First of all, it's conceded. It has 100% probability and 100% strength of link. In contrast, on the nuclear war debate, that's a very contentious debate. If that debate is a wash, you'd probably just pull the trigger on environment and vote negative. Second, they do the very analysis about why we should look to environment structural balance arguments. Like for example, in our environment, impact over like high magnitude, low probability impacts in their 1AC. In fact, they do this exact analysis when they say that these threats are socially constructed and they're constructed based on biases that already exclude poor people and minorities in the status quo, which means that the only way to have any inclusive policy discussion is to actually discuss issues like the environment, discuss issues like biodiversity and food supply collapse that are affecting minorities and poor people that are traditionally marginalized in these policy discussions, which is a unique warrant for why we should discuss impacts that are relevant to these communities rather than impacts that they say are socially constructed in the very first speech, which is probably a reason why the environment outweighs nuclear war. Next, even if they do any risk of nuclear war, we will do link weighing between the 2 nuclear war scenarios. Neeraj's scenario, basically on Neeraj's scenario, he's beat back all the defensive arguments. All the argument we need in order to win nuclear war is that China just has an incentive to build nuclear weapons because they're less scared of the U.S. because the U.S. will not first strike them. Their analysis that like Congress will basically never issue a first strike because 1/3 of them are against it means that China will now develop nuclear weapons and now is less scared of the U.S. and is more likely to go further in provoking conflict because they know the U.S. will never attack them. Also, the fact that there's no second strike capability once the U.S. is hit means that China and Russia have massive incentives to attack the U.S. and mutually assured destruction basically is irrelevant to this. Also, even if we don't win and a war actually happens, the fact is that China has incentive to go to Namibia and basically extract more uranium so they can build more nuclear weapons. This was conceded. Also, they've conceded that this leads to a massive destruction of the Namibian environment because it leads to deforestation, or to build uranium mines, leads to desertification, and the collapse of species. This is terrible for the environment, kills a lot of food, destroys like the water supply, and brings resource wars and conflicts that will probably entrap 1 billion people in violence. This is a massive amount of structural violence that probably weighs the affirmative. Next, the second overview. This overview is a meta-weighing overview of how you should value the different weighing arguments in the round. We argue that they should not get any new 1AR weighing or any 1AR responses to arguments in the block, and you should hold me a really high standard for this. Ace of point is non-verifiability. We don't get a 2NR, which means that we cannot respond to their 1AR arguments, so they're non-verifiable, and non-verifiability prevents the possibility of a logically adjudicated debate, so don't vote on non-verifiable arguments. Ace of point, the app would always win if they got new 1AR arguments. You should be really, really picky here, because the app can blow up any marginal amount of offense to outweigh how much offense the negative is able to prove, so you should not allow them any newness. Next one to case. The only other way they could try to win is by going through this argument about how plant flaws are exclusionary. First of all, the fact that you're able to beat this back without like any sophisticated grammatical knowledge probably means this is true. Second, the fact is that you say argument with it that's not attached to a framework, right? There's no role in ballot. They give you no way to evaluate offense. In fact, in their first speech, they say you should evaluate through net benefits, right? So like they're basically changing their framework in the 2C. This is pretty abusive, so they just change their framework. Also, they give you no way to analyze the different impacts on the ground, right? How do you evaluate between like nuclear war and then this like one discursive impact on the ground? We would argue that nuclear war and environmental destruction probably outweigh. Next one, a case. Okay. The biggest argument here is that Democrats are probably just as bad for like the military-industrial complex as Trump. The Donald Trump is the biggest donor for the Democratic Party. He's giving you a lot of awards. Why? Just getting Trump out of office is probably not going to do a lot. The Democratic Party is also super militarist. There's probably going to be militarists no matter what. Second, they've conceded the analysis that even though the state of exception is probably bad, it's not reverse causal. In fact, none of their authors, none of their arguments show that it's possible to reverse past the state of exception or reverse the process of securitization because these biases are so ingrained. Also, the funding argument supercharges this because it means that the root cause about why these politicians are militarists probably means that there will be no ability to like reverse the securitization. Debate breaks down real simple. You can just pull the trigger on the environment argument since that was conceded. Even if you buy that, we're probably winning a much stronger liquidated nuclear war. Be super, super picky about how new the 1AR is, because if they want to have a chance of winning this round, they're going to have to be really new and really cheaty. So you should pay very close attention.
Okay, the order is going to be the should shall, sand.
Wait, sand?
Oh yeah, you know, non-verifiability, and then I'm going to go on to something else.
Is non-verifiability the final argument?
That's like the thing that I'm just
Can you repeat order?
Yeah, it's going to be,
The one I are can.
yeah, the should shall,
That one.
should debate, the truth testing sand debate. Then I'm going to go over the like shall, non-verifiability, when AR responses. Then I'm going to go impact weighing. And with the impact weighing, I'm going to talk about the advantage and the disadvantage side by side. Hold on 1 minute. Sorry. Is everybody ready? Okay. 3. You should be voting affirmation on the first 2 arguments that I'm going to go for. First argument is going to be that of the should-shall debate. The negation makes a really big mistake when they concede by partners' analysis that they are excluding specifically people who aren't learning English, which means there's a decrease in education. Their vote argument is education, which means you can pull the trigger for this. You can extend my partner's analysis. Neeraj only says that it stunts policy options, but our argument is going to be that inclusion means that policy option can be actually created. And second of all, we need to be looking towards rhetoric, and rhetoric doesn't really matter that much at the point where we need to be looking towards education in today's round, and we still get access to this, and they actually know what we're doing, so it probably doesn't matter. But you can pull the trigger for this because they say that the voter here is education.
No one read a voter for education or fairness the entire round until now.
So the first speech has a voter for education underneath the should-shall debate.
It's legal education, not like education in general, right? Different argument. The first time anyone
Okay.
made a voter for generic.
It's a panel. Okay, resuming time in 3, 2. But even if you don't vote on that, let's go into the truth testing argument. Wow, this is okay. Wow. Sophie spends a lot of time on this argument. This is an independent voting issue. They never respond to the fact that my partner says that you should vote you should air app on this, presume app, because of all this truth testing argument. They just kick out of it. This is probably very bad for the very bad for the negative at the point where we have unique offense on this. You can extend my partner's second argument out here that says the same is specifically bad, which means that your argument is bad. There's offense on this sheet, which means that you have accessibility to vote on this. All 3 judges should be looking towards this. This is an independent voting issue. Even if we aren't willing all the arguments on everything else, you should be voting this because we are specifically excluded from the round, and they could have gone for this. They kick out of.
The characterization of sameness as a voting issue is completely blatantly new in the 1AR.
Okay. You kick out of this in the block. I'm extending offense.
The way you're articulating it in the voter is new.
I mean, it's a panel. Okay. Resuming time in 3, 2, 1. You can extend Sophie's analysis on here, but even if you don't, she says the words presume AF because they waste our time on arguments like this. They say you should be looking towards the affirmation with a little bit of skepticism because we're going to go through all these cheaty things and try and give you new arguments. This is probably not going to happen at the point where they can see a ton of arguments, and I'm just going to tell you that those arguments, no way. Let's go on to some impact weighing. First, let's talk about the United States-China scenario. We tell you in the first speech I tell you in the first speech that we are the internal link to being able to solve international relations, and that we are the root cause to be able to solve any of these wars or any of these conflicts because we control the internal link to any threat construction. The negative has no solvency for any of this. The problem is that they never interact with the argument that you need to be evaluating this rhetoric. And the reason why the affirmation wins today's round is because we're able to specifically solve for the rhetoric that Trump is using in the status quo. If the threat construction is never able to happen in the world of the affirmation, we are able to check back for this. The neg makes a really big mistake when they never consider our international relations arguments. We tell you that this is going to be so strong that if you look into the third link, we tell you that is a perceptual link. It decreases the international chance of war if people see that the United States is checking back, and you can also extend the fact that international policymakers are going to be looking towards the United States, and that 67% of parliaments are going to vote similar to the United States according to Pew Research, and that other countries are going to require checkbacks, which means that this decreases the chance of international conflict. Our argument is that since this is conceded, it's probably going to outweigh because they concede this fact. This short circuits the United States-China impact scenario, which means that they do not get access to this. Don't let them have any of this. Second is that if they say enviro over nuclear war, no, our argument is going to be that nuclear war.
So the extension of multilateral adoption of United States policy is a shadow extension out of the AC, and then the cross application to it, short-circuiting our U.S.-China scenario is new in the AR?
Sophie makes specific analysis and cross-applies why international checkback is specifically key for both the U.S.-China war relations and the enviro. if they concede the root cause argument,
Are you on time?
yes.
Okay.
If they concede the root cause argument,
Then it means that they don't have access to any of their
then it means they don't have access to the impacts, and we are the internal link to being able to solve their impacts. Second of all, they are going for a plan here, which means there's a strive die for the affirmation. But back onto the way for the environment versus nuclear war, our argument is going to be that international releases are able to check back for this. But even if you don't believe this, they never give you any specific terminalization of impacts underneath here, so there's probably no reason for you to be voting on this. If you look to look at the advantage. There's a lot of ink for the affirmation on here that goes conceded from the negative, so the cleanest place to vote is probably going to be on here. At the point where they're not offering a counter plan or a counter policy option, it's going to be try or die for the affirmation. If there is a 1% probability that you're going to be able to see a decrease in war and a stabilization of conflict zones that they also concede, this is probably going to be an affirmation ballot. But even if you don't believe that, their arguments here are simply not strong enough. They say that Democrats are like getting money from all these like this military-industrial complex. They never respond to my partner's argument that, what do you think?
I just said we're creating coalitions.
Oh yeah, the coalitions. Okay, we say that creating coalitions and international actors working together is specifically able to check back for all this because democratic policymaking is the only chance for us to be able to solve any of these things. And second, yeah, they also concede that we're at meetings right now, which means that we are able to diffuse the situation we are able to diffuse the United States-China scenario. Okay. They also concede that mutually assured destruction means that countries aren't going to go to war together. They have a map spike, but it's not going to happen.
They say mutually assured destruction doesn't matter, but we specifically warn it out by saying that we still have it.
Yeah, we say MAD doesn't happen, but Sophie gives you specific warrants for why it's going to be happening because of the China, the example that she gives with China and another country going to war with each other because yeah. So at the end of the day, war is probably going to outweigh because it causes more displacement and causes more environmental degradation. I'm just tired at this point.
It is a 2-1 decision for the negative. I can go first, I guess. I voted neg. I give the grain of sand argument to the affirmative as well as the should-shall ones. I have a hard time evaluating them for you because they're not identified as like a priority voter issue, so something I can evaluate like for you first. So I grant them to you like on equal ground as the rest of the way through this specific case of arguing about like the generic education voters new and last speech about physical education. Like you get those arguments, I would presume act based on those arguments if I have nothing else. So I go to the rest of the case. The only real weighing I have on case impacts is that environment needs to come first in that whole block that came in the LOR, which is not sufficiently responded to in the PMR, as well as the fact that that environment scenario basically flows through with like very little ink on it throughout the entirety of the debate. So I basically grant the environment scenario to the neg. On all of the nuclear war scenarios and so forth, the argument about like the app being the internal link to solve for the root cause of threat construction, etc., kind of flows through, except for the fact that the neg makes the argument that it's not reverse causal, and that you even if you're the root cause, you can't fix it, and that argument is not sufficiently answered for me to give you the rhetoric internal link arguments to the rest of threat construction. So then I just look primarily actually who is causing war and so forth, and then I'm forced to weigh your arguments of talking about how there's this perceptual international coalitions check back for war against the arguments about China's going to proliferate because there's no second strike capabilities, all of those types of arguments. I grant more credence to the latter just because there are more actual warrants on that, and it's easier to evaluate that. But in either event, the environment impacts come first. I think the PMR strategy was overall okay, but you need to do a lot more work on the environment.
I voted kind of similarly. I gave both of you the sand and the should-shall arguments. But again, you guys didn't put in a priority, so I had to also vote on it the same way. You guys also dropped the 2 critical dissents that you put on the counterplan, the one for tense and authoritarianism. If you guys would have carried that to the end, I would have given you guys my ballot because those 2, in my opinion, would have weighed more over environmentalism. So, on top of that, when it came down to it, you had multilateralism checks back for war specifically, not really dealing with environmentalism and how China will be forced to enter into talks with the U.S. So at the end of the day, I had to vote on the drop environmentalism argument.
I voted aye. I did not give you either the sand or the should-shall argument. I even voted to that. Mainly so you give to sand, the nigger's one with no offense, and they didn't really explain that, and I don't think that even if that is the case, you can't just throw that out there. I'm not for that. Same with the should shall. Just going straight down the chase, you have links about the arms. The name has links about the arms race, which the app adjusted the check back, and I put it up there. Same with the environment. Honestly, weighing the environment, I thought that the app had more